Van Bradford, Blitzberg, question mark. Seems like we rarely blitz. Why?
Well, because we have guys that can win one-on-ones up front. When you got guys like Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt, Larry Ogunjobi that can win one-on-ones consistently. Now, obviously, we know with TJ, he's still getting back up to speed. But Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward, Cam specifically last game, that is what you want, because now you don't have to put your defense, your secondary, in a bind by removing a guy from coverage to have him rushing. Now, the pros of blitzing are you're going to usually have a free rusher, or you're going to at least have a one-on-one, right? So they can't slide protection, they can't double anybody. But the flip side is you're going to be short a guy in coverage. So if that ball does not come out right now, if the blitzer doesn't win, if the sack doesn't happen, now that, the coverage guys are going to be in a little bit more of a bind. And they didn't want to do that specifically against Devontae Adams. They had a double team on him a ton of times. And Minkah Fitzpatrick talked about this post game, and the film reflected it. They were exotic as heck in terms of who were double teaming Devontae, which angles they were coming from for the double team, the pre-snap disguises for the double teams, because the Raiders, they used Devontae in the slot. They lined him up at the number 1 position. They lined him up at the number 3 position. And what I mean by that number 1 position is the side all the way next to the sideline, right? Or the receiver that's aligned by himself. Then at times they would line him up at the number 3 position, which is like where your tight end is located at, like sometimes really near the line of scrimmage. They would line him up all over the place. And the reason why you do that is because most defenses, and specifically our defense, we don't do a lot of mixing and matching, or what we like to call bastardizing calls for players' alignment, which is why we struggle when teams put a wide receiver in the slot, or they put a wide receiver at that tight end position, because you'll more times than likely get a linebacker on that. This week, what we decided to do was we're going to make it a legitimate hard double team wherever Devontae was when he was in the slot. So it didn't matter if it was going to be a linebacker on him, you were going to have a safety helping out. It didn't matter if it was going to be a corner on him, like if we were in our nickel defense, you were going to have a safety helping out. And sometimes they showed it hard pre-snap. Sometimes they showed too high and moved to it. But it was going to make sure, they were going to make sure that Devontae was not going to beat them.
Good idea.
Yeah, heck yeah. But that was why you would have some one-on-ones or some other players getting just more favorable matches, because they're like, I would much rather you make Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, I'm drawing a blank on the other, Moreau. Yeah, guys like them. Like, can they beat you for 4 quarters? As we saw, Waller, he has that capability, but they weren't able to connect enough with him. So now you're looking at it and you're like, they making plays, yes, but that's not enough to kill us. That's not enough where they're going to have to execute. They're not able to do that, and we saw that. And what did we say also about that Raiders team? They were -3 on the season coming into this game in the turnover margin. They turn the ball over, and they do not generate turnovers. Carr had 11 picks coming into this game. So him throwing 3 interceptions, now granted, it wasn't all on him in terms of the interceptions happening, but in the sense of them turning the ball over in games, they do that. And that was the other thought process when playing that Vegas Raiders team. Take away Devontae, make them have to slow bleed this thing and execute 12, 15 play drives, because they cannot do that consistently for 4 quarters. And what happened? They did it the first drive, and we never saw it again.
I think that was on 3rd down, too.
Yeah.
Pass to
Renfrow. Yeah. But it was like we never saw them be able to just execute double-digit play drives consistently without a self-inflicted issue, right? A drop, an overthrow, an interception, a penalty. They would do something to mess themselves up, and that's been their knock this season. Extremely talented team, but they have a ton of self-inflicted, just self-sabotage that they do. Usually it's in the 3rd quarter. On, Saturday happened a little bit earlier than that.
Oh, they didn't score in the second half.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, usually it starts in the 3rd where they start like self-destructing, but to me, it was just like they never even got to that point where they could self-sabotage. It was just like opening drive, success, great. Then offensively, it was just kind of just in a rut. So, yeah.